All right, guys. So we're going to talk briefly about conspiracy theories and what what they mean as far as spider bite venom philosophy is concerned. I'm obviously very skeptical of you know not just the conspiracy theories that are touted by a lot of these tinfoil hat type guys, but I'm also just as skeptical of the government and what comes out of the fake news and stuff like that as well. And and that's because I'm able to just look at everything through a lens according to Spider Bite Venom philosophy, which is a combination of Jedi slash Stoic slash Tao philosophy, and basically, the main underlying principle of that philosophy is what I wrote here, which is it's human nature to be selfish. Therefore, it's human nature to conspire against one another. And at some level, no matter how minute that level might be or how great that level might be, we're all conspiring against each other because we're inherently selfish. And when I say selfish, as I talk about in other sections of this free online course, is that selfish means, desiring things that are beyond our basic physical needs, such as food, water, and shelter, and, things like that. So anything that's beyond our physical needs, our basic physical needs, we have to, come up with some creative way to get those things, and that's, conspiring. That's what conspiracy, is associated with. It's associated with, coming up with a way, creating a way, designing a plan, designing a strategy to get what you want. That's over and beyond your physical basic needs. And when you look at everything like that, then you see why there's a lot of truth to the conspiracy theories that are floating out there. And conspiracy theories have been obviously floating through the beginning of time, because conspiracy theories kind of help us explain in a more, how would you say, tangible sense, a more practical sense, I guess you would say. It would, help us explain what happened. Everybody wants to know what happens. The problem is that, you know, there's a difference between one type of knowledge and another type of knowledge. The type, or there's a difference with knowledge, when it comes to knowledge. Most people think that somebody's opinion, somebody's idea, speculation is knowledge, but it's not. If anything, it could be a waste of time, unless that knowledge is used to kind of decipher what happened, in a court case, or maybe something happened to a loved one or something like that, and we want to find out what happened. But even then, what's been done is done. Those, it goes back to another principle of spider bite venom philosophy, which is, a combination of Stoic philosophy. Is that there's things that are beyond our control. Those things, what's happened in the past, we can't control the past. And most things we can't control in the present either. And if we try to control the future, which is nearly impossible, but if we try to control the future, then we're gonna at some point suffer emotionally. So when it comes to conspiracy theories, it's just basically knowledge that's not really necessary. It's not one of the basic needs we all have in order to survive day by day. And so when you hear theories like, and some of these are true, like you look at this first picture here in this strip of celluloid film. This is the Ides of March, where it's a depiction of Julius Caesar being assassinated by a bunch of conspirators. And, they obviously, had a reason for killing the emperor, but, at the end of the day, it just all comes back down to selfishness. For however they justify, I mean, that's what selfishness is. You're justifying what you did to get something beyond your basic physical needs. So, this type of knowledge is interesting to people who they want to obtain the same desires or obtain the same things they desire the same things, like in this case power. They want to obtain the exact same things that some of these historical conspiracies the perpetrators have done, but to someone who's just focusing on controlling themselves and not trying to control the world around them, it's interesting, it's entertaining, but that's about as far as it goes. If you go to this next picture here, where you have Nostradamus, and supposedly he predicted all these conspiracies against mankind, where someone's going to come up with the bomb and destroy the planet, and stuff like that. There's obviously some element of truth to all that, but most conspiracy theories are exercises in deductive thinking. And deductive thinking is a very powerful tool that all humans have. It could actually be useful to give us insight. And I think that's really what Nostradamus was trying to do. He wasn't necessarily trying to predict anything. He was just, he just had a lot of insight into the future. And insight is different than trying to predict stuff. Insight just means, I recognize this pattern of behavior, and if this keeps going, then ultimately this will probably happen, and this will probably happen. Where unlike predictions, predictions are pretty much like, well, this is guaranteed to happen, and with insight, the interesting thing about insight is, a good large percentage of what you think is going to happen is probably going to happen, but it probably is not going to happen exactly the way you think it's going to happen. So that's the difference. Whereas prediction says, this is going to happen on this certain date. It's very specific, and it's all guaranteed to happen just the way I said it. And that's nearly impossible for it to be true unless you're a prophet or something. But, it could be true. It could be true because, again, both predicting and using insight uses deductive thinking. It kind of both recognize that, hey, this and that's going to happen. The problem, I would say the main difference, though, in having insight, which I think is a good thing as far as trying to predict the future, which is, I think, as very very risky and not as good is the fact that when you try to predict, you create fear. You know, the reason why a lot of conspiracy theorists like Nostradamus is because it makes people afraid. You know, and if you are afraid, then that's going to lead to anger, and anger is going to lead to hate, and hate's going to lead to suffering. According to Jedi philosophy, and it's true. You let's just for the sake of argument, Nostradamus had these visions, and he thought, a nuclear bomb was going to go off or something like that. Well, he would be right. I mean, the United States has dropped one or two of them over a couple cities in Japan. So these things could come about, could be true, but the problem is that if we're looking at them to add to our fears, then that could be very risky. That could cause us all kinds of problems. Look at the next picture here. You see a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Obviously, this did happen. And the conspiracy, though, is who actually done it. And the interesting thing about the legal system and the law, it's not perfect, but it is the best you have, and it's just one of those things where you realize that everything's beyond your control, even an unfair judgment. So let's say they accused the wrong guy, and you happen to be the one they accused. Well, that's beyond your control. And let's say you're sentenced to death. I mean, this is why it's good to study Stoic philosophy and obviously what I'm teaching here, Spider Bite Venom, because you'll be able to better understand and accept things that are beyond your control, and you'll still be able to find happiness and contentment without necessarily having a fair trial or having a fair shot at life, or or all the opportunities that people say are guaranteed because you live in a particular country or something like that. So if you look at that, that's historical facts. Look at figures like the one who shot Abraham Lincoln. That's really how you should look at them. Is it's more than likely they got the right guy, but if it wasn't the right guy, then it's just, at the end of the day, we all die. So even if someone gets away with it, eventually he's going to die like the rest of us. If you look at the next picture here, there's one of these lizard people. I'm not going to mention any names, but I'll just go ahead and say, like, you have this David Icke guy. I think he's a good guy. I don't think he has any bad intentions. But he's came up with this whole conspiracy theory about the reptilians being the elite that rule the earth and so forth, and it's, some of the stuff is just kind of laughable, and who's to say how much he maybe is just talking metaphorically, but one thing's for sure, is that the people that are running the world today are no different than the people who ran the world yesterday, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. It all goes back to this selfish nature that's in all of us. And again, selfish nature is going to make those people conspire against one another. In Tao philosophy, you learn that everything works in harmony with opposites. What goes up must go down, what goes left must go right, what keeps what's coming is going, that sort of thing. And when you're a ruler, you have to have someone who's ruling, who you're ruling over. And, those people that you're ruling over are just as selfish as you are, because, who wants to be ruled, right? Why not be the ruler yourself? So the so-called ruling elite, whatever you want to call them, are definitely going to come up with strategies and plans. And like here, I think this is depicting the Illuminati, with the all-seeing eye, and the picture you see on the back of a dollar bill or whatever. It's just, in other words, what I'm saying is there's no conspiracy necessary to say maybe a tiny group of people are behind all this stuff, but that's just because it's just human nature. Human nature would come up with some creative way to control the world, because again, the people that you're ruling over, they're day by day constantly trying to conspire against you, because they want to overthrow you. So we've come up with systems over the past, and a lot of these systems were created by these so-called reptilian elite type people, because they had the experience. They probably had to do something themselves to get to the top, and now that they're at the top, now they're all coming up with different ways on how to stay at the top. And so they would call on these various advisors, which we would also call philosophers, and these types of people, to give them advice on human nature, or at least let them know, because most people are ignorant of the fact that most people, that everybody's selfish to some degree. And so they would call on these people to help them create, let's say the Federal Reserve System, a system that is designed to basically take ownership of everything. If you look at the history of the Federal Reserve System and the dynamic principles involved, it's almost perfect as far as conspiracy theory is concerned. But as far as malintent and intention of evil is concerned, well, selfishness is obviously inherently evil, but it's, people who put in these types of systems, they will always justify it by saying, well, this is for the greater good. This is to protect the rulers from the to protect the ruling class from those who are being ruled, and so that we won't have this constant chaos, of hitting each other over the head. And so that's why it's really a waste of time to try to pinpoint one family like the Rothschilds or Rockefellers or Carnegies or whoever, the British Crown or whatever. That's really not your problem. Your problem is that they created a system over the years to protect their right to rule. And it's very interesting how they did it, but there's really nothing you can do about it, because, like the Tao philosophy says, for every up there's a down, size, and so forth, and that means that in order for this system to work, the ruling class themselves, if you want to call them that, they've had to give up just as much power as they currently have, which is kind of ironic. It's kind of maybe Maybe you're not able to see that right off the bat. But, the whole idea of, democracy and capitalism and so forth is to give you this illusion that the ruling, the subjects, or in the case of democracy, the citizens, to give them the illusion that they're ruling, when actually they're just co-equal or co-rulers with the ruling class. And anytime it looks like the one of these two are not getting what they want, then that's when you start to see the conflict. But the system is there to kind of arbitrate that, which is kind of cool when you think about it. And that's because the system itself is the result of the ignorance that almost 99% of people have, which is you can't control things that are beyond your control. If everybody knew that and everybody practiced that philosophy, there would be no need for a Federal Reserve System. There wouldn't be a need to create all these conspiracies or these strategies to protect each other from being overthrown or eliminating one another, as co-rulers and that sort of thing. So, that's the point of making this this tutorial, this online course, is to help you understand how the world works and why we just need to focus on what we can control and not what we can't control, because anything beyond that is has to go through a lot of suffering and killing and hitting each other over the head and pain in order to come up with ways to arbitrate amongst themselves, and that's just to mitigate the suffering, and at the same time, it allows opportunity for people who do have a desire for something beyond just their physical needs. So that's why I put that picture here to kind of show that. And then of course you have 9/11, and that was there were a lot of conspiracy theories around that. But it all goes back to the same thing, whether they're true or not. Is missing the point. At the end of the day, there were some selfish people who felt justified in killing a lot of people. And, what they were trying to do was overthrow their co-rulers, because we all rule together according to the system that they've come up with. And not just according to them, it's just a fact. I mean, this is as best you're going to get. Is this system where you have some countries that are ruled by a caliphate or caliph, or whatever you want to call it, or a theocracy, theocratic rule, and you have another society ruled by a socialist, Marxist, communist type of system, and then you got a Western world that's run by a so-called capitalist democracy, and and a republic. But at the end of the day, because of the threats of nuclear weapons and so forth, we're all just co-rulers, knowing that if we try to destroy one of the other co-rulers, then we'll risks destroying ourselves in the process. So then that brings us to this next picture here, which is that of Bill Gates and Rothschild. Interesting thing about these paper billionaires is that they might look like they're rich, but at the end of the day, we're all invested, and their money is denominated in currency that was created by a ruling class that lived now, I guess over 100 years ago, and so it doesn't matter how much money somebody like Bill Gates make, and to some degree he kind of knows that, which is why if you look at the next picture, maybe he has his own conspiracy theory. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter because he's just as selfish as anybody else. He wants to, have some kind of impact, some kind of control over the world, and he justifies that by thinking he's doing good. And this is what all rulers think. They all think that they're doing what they're doing to protect you, and so there's a lot of conspiracy theory about whether or not he's created this latest pandemic or whatever, and whether that's true or not, again, it misses the point, because at some point somebody's going to do it, and if not, there's just nature itself. Again, what goes up must come down, and what matters more is how we react to things. So people like him, if they have a lot of influence over one group of co-rulers, they can manipulate them or seduce them into reacting in a way that gets what he wants. That allows him to get what he wants, which is selfish and it's human nature, which is egotistical and so forth, beyond our basic needs. So that kind of brings a wrap to this. I'll talk more about how the system works in political economy, and because it's important to understand, because if you do understand that there's some element of truth in all these, but at the same time understand that what most people focus on when it comes to this kind of stuff is not your problem. It's you should be more focused on what you can control within these various conspiracy theories and these various systems that's been created. When you go at it at that approach, then this is why I'm writing this stuff. You'll do well, and a lot of this stuff will you'll know what makes sense and what doesn't. You'll know what sounds goofy and silly, and then you also be able to not waste your time on things that don't really matter. So anyway, we'll wrap that up here, and then we'll go on to the next section.